With the first pick,
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome into the Fantasy Rant podcast. We got a surprise episode for y'all. We are dropping the week 2 previews because we had a 2-hour and 45-minute podcast for the reviews. We went long. We're going to try to keep it at an hour today, but we got some week 2 previews for you guys. I am Dan Baker, accompanied by my co-host Mason Beck. We're going to be approaching all of these week 2 games, previewing everything, giving you all the matchups that you want to know. If you have a question, drop it in the comment. We'll put you up on the podcast and answer your question. But first off, let's kick it with the question of the day. Since 2018, there has been 6 rookies with 1,000 rushing yards in their rookie season. How many of those rookies followed it up with an additional 1,000-yard season? And if you can, name those rookies. It'll be interesting to see if you can see who followed up their rookie season with another 1,000-yard rushing yard season in their sophomore year. We'll have the answer for you at the end of it. If you beat me to the punch, we'll throw you up on the podcast. All right, let's get straight into the nitty-gritty, bro. We got the first game on the Sunday slate. We got Green Bay against Atlanta. I think the line has changed. I know the line has changed. From where it is right now, we had a +2. So it started off the week, Green Bay favored by 2 points. Right now, the line is Atlanta favored by 1 point. The over-under is going to be 40.5 on this game. And then really quickly, some injuries to watch. Aaron Jones has been questionable all week, missing a couple of practices. We have Christian Watson also missing the first 2 practices of the week. Romeo Doubs looks to be healthy. He missed a couple practices at the beginning, but I think they're really just trying to limit his practice work throughout the beginning of the week. He only played 29 of 60 snaps in week 1. So even if he is considered healthy for week 2, just keep in mind that he might be on a limited snap count. However, last week he came up big. He still ended up in the end zone. Romeo Doubs looked good, and if nobody else is there, when Romeo Doubs is on the field, he's going to get some looks. All right, so Green Bay at Atlanta. Mason, what are you thinking about this game? Where are you leaning? Who do you think's a solid matchup in this week 2 game?
Well, honestly, I think that Jordan Love is going to have a good game. I mean, the over-under, you said it was like 40, and Atlanta's favored, which just really surprises me. I mean, like Green Bay's defense looked pretty solid last week. I think Atlanta's going to have some tough time doing it, especially if Green Bay can get in there and really slow the run game down. I don't see too much out of Drake London again. I mean, if he puts up another goose egg, I'm not going to be too shocked. I'm thinking Ritter could do a little better than he did week 1. Obviously, the game plan was hardcore running the whole time. But it's something to look after. Just kind of watch Ritter. I mean, this could be a big week on deciding if he actually worth fantasy value in any means. I think Love's going to have another great game again, especially if Watson comes back. I said this on Wednesday, that, Love overthrew a couple feet. He had 2 throws where he overthrew his receiver by a couple feet. And if Watson's back, I mean, it's just going to add to Love's fantasy performance. If you had Aaron Rodgers as your guy, you might be able to pick up Love or, get Love at a low value. He might be someone who I honestly think can save your season in a sort of way. I do like this matchup a lot for him. The running back situation, I'm not touching Dillon, even if Jones is out, just because the week 1 performance was so poor from A.J. Dillon that I saw no reason to have him on my fantasy lineup.
Right. Even he had the touches. I feel like in the very first game of the season, KC in Detroit, we saw Montgomery look more like that lumbering back. Like he didn't look explosive like Jahmyr Gibbs did. I feel like they have kind of that same vibe to this backfield. When Aaron Jones is healthy, he's the Gibbs of that backfield. Going to catch some passes, going to look explosive. A.J. Dillon did not look good in week 1 at all. But the difference is he doesn't have the Detroit offensive line in front of him. So I agree with you. I'm really not looking to start AJ Dillon unless I'm a desperate team looking for a flex play, or maybe if you're one of those guys that do the high level handcuff and you have AJ Dillon in place and you need to replace Aaron Jones. That's about the only two situations, though. Right now, I think I said it last podcast, but Green Bay, the Packers, both last year and in week 1, they happen to be the 7th worst rushing defense in terms of, how much rushing yards they let up. I think that the Falcons are gonna do what the Falcons do. They're gonna run the ball nonstop. We're gonna see plenty of Bijan. We're gonna see plenty of Algier. And I really do personally think that I think that Atlanta could come out on top. I think there's a reason why the books have swung in favor of Atlanta. If I was to place a bet, I would put it out on Atlanta. But that's just because I think they can control this game. I don't think that it's going to be a shootout. I think the over under is right where I think it's correct where it is right now at 40.5 points. I think this is going to be a slow burn game. They're going to run the ball. It's going to be heavy clock utilization. Falcons are going to control the ball most of the time. And I just personally, I need another couple weeks of Jordan Love before I'm bought in. I think that he is fine. I think he's going to be, in terms of like real NFL value as a quarterback, I think somewhere right now I'll have him between like, I don't know, the 15 to 20 range in terms of guys I would want to have on my team to start a franchise. He's got the youth on his side. He can continue to grow into the quarterback that a lot of them think that he can be. But without Watson being a lock for this lineup and missing all practices until then, or until now, I'm not going to be starting Love in any leagues. The only guy that I'm really looking for as a value that's a question in your lineup, I'll be starting Algier. But you also touched on it from the Falcons. I am also not starting Drake London. Drake London's the only true threat at the wide receiver position for their team, and the Green Bay Packers have one true great cornerback. So, I think that he's gonna be covering him all day long. I really don't see Jair Alexander losing too many matchups to Drake London, even though I think London's a solid wide receiver. With the low volume he's getting, I don't see him being a threat in week 2. Alright,
Um,
so
Something else interesting I wanted to add onto that. Cordarrelle Patterson did get cleared to play for week 2. So we could see how he works in if he takes any snaps from the other two backs. Maybe he becomes a more of a receiver this year. So we got to see if he actually does still hold any fantasy value. That's something
right.
to kind of watch out for this week.
Leave it to Arthur Smith to potentially give Cordarrelle Patterson some running game work too, just so everybody in the fantasy world hates him even more. Every Pitts owner hates him. Every London owner hates him. Now let's just make the Bijan and the Algier owners more upset. Let's mix in some Patterson. See how it goes. Why
It would
not
not
Arthur Smith?
me because that coach is just I don't even know sometimes.
The thing is, too, it's frustrating because he's not a bad coach. If we look at the Falcons roster last year, there's no way any of us think that they're even close to competing. And they were only, I think, one game away from first place. Granted, a terrible NFC South division, but still, I think they ended up being 8-9 last year, or seven, maybe it was 7-10. Regardless, Arthur Smith is out to make enemies, and I can just feel this Patterson sneaking in and making all of us mad. Oh man, we're gonna have something to talk about in week 3. All right, so we have the next game up is the Raiders against the Bills. The over under on this at the moment is the week. We have the Bills at a 9.5 point spread, and the over under is 46.5 points. I am personally looking for the Bills to have a big bounce back week. I don't think there's any other way about it. I think the Bills are too good to not take advantage of a subpar Raiders defense. Really, you have Max Crosby as a stud on that team. Outside of that, there's nobody that you're truly worried about breaking the game in a way that Crosby could. But I think that if the Bills have this matchup, Diggs is going to go off. James Cook, you're obviously starting. Dalton Kincaid still a little bit too questionable to start right now. In week one, we saw it was Diggs and the rest of the team. Everybody else had either 3 or 4 receptions on the game. So I am not looking to start any Bills wide receivers other than Diggs. And obviously, we have Cook at the running back position. Outside of that, and Josh Allen, I'm not starting anybody else on the Bills offense. What do you think, though, Mason?
No, I mean, I kind of agree with the same thing. Diggs, Cook, and Allen are probably going to be your only 3 guys that really are guaranteed to put up points. Gabe Davis could have a week. Well, he's very up and down, boomer
Right.
bust player, but I'm still not starting him unless I'm
Yes.
desperate or, pretty much only if I'm desperate, I'm starting Gabe Davis. Kincaid, I still don't think it's worth a start, especially if you got another option there. It's still early on. Him and Dawson Knox might be fighting for the ball still a lot.
Right.
Early in the rookie season, tight ends usually don't get a ton of work. So
For
I
sure.
still think he's a sit for now. Maybe give it another couple weeks. Then as far as like the Raiders side of the ball, Devontae, I mean, I would start Josh Jacobs still just because the draft capital you spent into him, it's hard not to start him.
Right.
But he had a
I'm not
sloppy
too worried about week one.
No,
Like
I'm not really.
it was discouraging, but Josh Jacobs is one of 3 startable guys on the team. They know that they are gonna feed him the rock. It's just a question of whether they are so deep in a negative game script that they can even run the ball. If they manage to keep this game a little bit close, I do think that Josh Jacobs will still get his 15, 16 touches or so. Makes a decent yard, turns up with at least, I'm hoping, 60 to 70 yards on the ground, hopeful for a touchdown. And it was surprising to see him with such a low target volume in week one. I think that especially if Jacoby Myers misses this game, Josh
He is
Jacobs is he is out. He's ruled out.
Myers got ruled out earlier today. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I saw that he was questionable with the concussion, and we were expecting him to miss. It was a bad concussion, and for his own sake, I want him to be out for at least one game. We've seen players rush back from concussions. It's not pretty. We want these guys to be their best selves, and Myers looked really solid in his first performance. Even if he didn't have the touchdown, he would have had a great PPR day. So I do think that with Myers out, I think Jacobs could have the potential to get up to 6 to 8 targets, hopefully 4 or 5 receptions at least, and truly be the running back one that people drafted him to be.
No, I think he could get a week where he returns back to form. I mean, he wasn't there all off season. It does take some time for these players to get things going again and get back into rhythm. Maybe he has another bad week, but even if he does, I'm still not super stressed about it.
Yeah,
Jacob should be a start in almost all leagues, and Devontae should definitely be a start. And all, I mean, why would you bench Devontae? But I think he's going to have a good week too with Jacoby out, and there's nobody else on that team that has proven yet that they're a real receiver and a real threat to take shares away.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And if you guys are looking at DFS, maybe Hunter Renfro can be a sneaky play. I wouldn't rely on him, especially if you're going full NFL Sunday slate. I probably wouldn't pick Renfro, but he will get some targets. Don't do FanDuel because they go half PPR. Stick with DraftKings if you're going to put Renfro in that lineup. You want the full point per reception. All right, moving on to our next game. We got Baltimore against the Bengals. We got Cincy as a 3.5 point favorite. The over under is 46.5 points. I personally am gonna take. I'm is I got to look up the weather report on this game. As long as it's not another rain game, I'm smashing the over here personally. especially if Mark Andrews is back in the lineup. Keep an eye out for the injury report for him right now. He's still questionable leading into it. I have a feeling he's going to ramp up into a full start. I'm hoping that Mark Andrews is my most drafted player in redraft right now. I'm in 12 leagues. I don't have a single player in more than 3 leagues other than Mark Andrews. And that hurt not having him in the lineup week one. I was already pivoting to guys like Greg Dulcich. He ends up getting injured. We already talked about it. Tight ends were ugly week one. So I am looking forward to starting Mark Andrews. I think one of the biggest questions in this game, though, what is the Ravens running back you are looking to start this week? Or is there a Ravens running back you're looking to start this week?
I mean, honestly, I would probably go Gus Edwards over Justice Hill if I'm starting a running back. But
Yes, sir.
if you start Gus Edwards, don't be too surprised if Justice Hill does become the lead back. If you're really starting either of those two guys, you're playing a heavy risk. You could easily have the lead back, the new lead back of the team, or you could easily have a guy that's not going to get much touches. It's definitely a risky start for either of them until at least for another week or two until we kind of see how that backfield's going to be kind of formed now that Dobbins is out.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I went on a rant on our last podcast about J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers. Uh, that being said, I do have Gus Edwards as my backup. I do have Justice Hill as a backup on that same team. On the waiver wires, however, in redraft, I prioritize Gus Edwards. I really do think that he is going to be the running back to roster out of this backfield. I know that they're looking to be a more pass heavy offense in comparison to years past. But when they're not going to not run the ball. They're still going to have at least probably 20 attempts per game. And Gus Edwards has proven that he can get it done. He's a very efficient running back. So I agree with you. I think he is the guy to own in that backfield. I personally dropped about 30 to 35% of my fab on him this week. When we're early in the season, you want to I would rather spend up early in the season than later in the season. 'Cause that means you got the guy that you believe in for the entire season. So it's like you can choose to hold on to your fab, but if you think there's a guy that is going to go get you points, he's going to do it for a longer duration of your time. And I really do think that Gus Edwards is going to have a career year if he can stay healthy. So that'll be interesting to see moving forward. Especially, I'm looking to see the passing snaps, how that's split up. If Gus Edwards is giving up all of the passing snaps to Justice Hill and Melvin Gordon, then maybe we adjust. And we know that he's going to have a limited upside. He's going to be incredibly touchdown dependent. But until then, I'm looking to start Gus Edwards out of the running backs on this team. On the Cincinnati side of the ball, don't be scared off by week one. Even as a Browns fan, I can attribute a lot of that game to the rain. I do think that we have an improved defense as the Browns, but I don't think that it's so much to the point where I'm worried about the Cincinnati offense. So we're obviously starting Burrow, Chase. In my opinion, obviously Higgins. I'm sure
Mhm.
if Evan was here, he would have something to say about that. But yeah, we're starting Mixon. Pretty much everybody on that roster is an easy start. Irv Smith had some interesting target reception in week one. He stayed pretty close to the line of scrimmage in terms of his ADOT, but keep an eye out for him. That's a guy that I think is a sleeper in most leagues. He's going to be available on waiver wires. So just keep your eye on him. If he has a couple of blow up weeks in a row, jump on that. Spend up, get your tight end. He's athletic. We've just been waiting for him to be healthy. All right,
Yeah.
moving to.
Oh,
Oh, I'm
as far
so
as like
sorry.
Irv
Go ahead.
Smith, yeah, no, you're good. As far as like Irv Smith goes, I think if you have the roster spot and you have a solid tight end one, I think he's worth to try to bench right now just to see, how he does fit into this offense. Week one,
Definitely.
I'm honestly kind of taking this as Cincinnati's week one because last week showed us nothing at all on how this team
Yeah.
is going to be this year. Like, we don't know
Mhm.
if Boyd is going to have relevance still. I mean, Higgins, he got 0 points, but he got targeted 8 times. He's not going to be
Right.
doing those crappy games every time. Um, but yeah, I think it is going to be interesting to watch to really see how this offense plan. Burrow was recovering from the injury. He's just now getting back pretty much. He was a question. There's a question for a while whether he would even play week 1. So yeah, really don't be worried if you have any of those guys. Start them like you were planning to in the offseason.
For sure. And the Ravens secondary doesn't seem to be what it once was either. So I'm have no worries about these wide receivers specifically.
I believe
All right.
Marlon Humphrey is questionable too.
Okay. That'll
Yeah.
be very important.
Yeah.
If Marlon Humphrey is questionable and ends up missing this game, I could see a blow up week from Jamar Chase.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Our third game of the week, we have the Seahawks against the Lions. The Lions, one of the bigger spreads of the week, favored by 6 points. We have the over under at 47.5 points. Lockett is the only guy that's on the offensive side of the ball that's really questionable. He was cleared after the concussion. I think he's going to play. Uh, I To the extent, I don't know. I think that there is a chance that if JSN is actually healthy, like they claimed him to be in week 1, I could see him taking a small step up in his role. Um, I do think that Lockett's still an easy start for me, especially if you have at least 2 flex spots in your league. Lockett's still a lock for me. I got Detroit still in the bottom half of defenses in the NFL, despite a decent defensive line. Their cornerbacks don't worry me. So I think that this is going to be a shootout personally. Last year, I forgot the exact score, but it was insane. The total score was in the 70s. So I'm really hoping we get a little bit more of the same. I would say the only person in this game that's a little bit questionable to start is JSN. I'm thinking he needs to prove it before I start him. What do you think about JSN though?
I mean, you pretty much stole it word for word. JSN is, I mean, Lockett, you could still have some question there. Should I really start him? But JSN, I'm not starting him in any leagues. I need him to show a little more reliability. Yeah, the Seattle pass game was awful week 1. I don't expect that to continue, honestly, especially against Detroit, who doesn't have the best defense. I think they'll have a good chance. Walker, still start him. I mean, it's Kenneth
For
Walker. He
sure.
still had a productive game week 1, even though their team was down pretty much the entire game. Charbonnet, if you're desperate, I still wouldn't even start him yet because
Agree.
he didn't prove anything. He didn't prove he's going to be a part of the receiving game. But yeah, I mean Charbonnet and JSN are definitely the two that it's just like I'm not starting them unless I'm absolutely desperate.
I completely agree with that. N- we should have said this up top for our preview episodes. We'll breeze over some of these obvious locks, but we were just talking about it. It's like very evident the studs that you're going to start. No one's going to be sitting guys like DK Metcalf. No one's going to be sitting Amon-Ra St. Brown. So if we don't mention them, don't think that we're not thinking about them. It's just too obvious to mention right here. We need to get to the guys that are questionable. And speaking of that in this game, who of these 2 quarterbacks would you start if you had to start either Goff or Geno Smith?
I'd honestly be going Goff in this situation. Interesting week 1, not the greatest, not the worst. But it was a very high intensity game. Week 1, a lot of rest to pull off. Geno, I mean, I think he had the more uncertain week 1 where you don't know if he's going to go back to how old Geno was playing. Um, I mean, if you're wanting the more, if you're looking at your projections and you're wanting a more, upside guy, take Geno. But if you're looking at a more safe, consistent guy, I think Goff's going to be your guy. I mean, he's got one of the best receivers in the league at
Yeah,
Amon Ra. So, I mean, Goff is going to always have that reliability.
right. Amon-Ra is a incredible safety blanket. It was frustrating seeing Geno performed so poorly in week one against what we perceive to be a underwhelming Rams defense and compared to years past. I I can't get away from the upside though. There's just too many weapons on that team. When they have all three of those wide receivers healthy, that's two more better wide receivers than the Lions have. Like I think that Josh Reynolds is a sneaky play if you have a deep league. I'm not looking to start him, and I still can't rely on a rookie tight end quite yet, even though Sam Laporta looks very athletic and had a solid debut. I just can't quite get behind it yet. I personally would slightly lean Gino. It is very close, and just I have to believe in more than just week one right now. My preseason rankings had Gino above Jared Goff, and neither defense is scary. So I'll slightly lean Gino. That's why I asked the question, though. It is very close. I would say I'd have them at like QB like 13 and 14 on the week if I was to guesstimate. So, all right, moving forward though, we got
Also, the Detroit game.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to comment on this real quick. Start Gibbs. Don't get scared of week one. Please start Gibbs.
for
If you
sure.
have him on your roster, start him.
You're right. I definitely should have brought him up because I don't think people think he's a lock. He's a lock. Like and there's no way they don't pass the ball to their running backs more than they did in week one. We talked about it on our last episode. Both running backs had 2 targets. That's not happening for the rest of the season, especially while Jameson Williams is gone. There's no way they just rely on these subpar wide receivers after Amon-Ra. They're going to start throwing the ball to their running backs, and that running back's name is Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery will get a couple of targets here and there, but he's going to be more of the bruiser. Gibbs, I expect to get at least 5 targets this week.
You don't trade up for a running back into the first round to not use the guy. I mean, week one, they're against one of the top teams in the NFL, one of the Super Bowl favorites. Don't blame them for using the old vet who's the more reliable option. But when you have this team, which could be, high flying, high scoring, Gibbs is going to be the guy.
Yeah, it was literally his first game in the NFL. They talked about easing him into the offense. They're going to do so more and more. And then especially if any of the coaches went back and watched the film, I bet you they're like, that Gibbs guy looks pretty freaking good right now. Just like you said, there's a reason why the entire draft room was like going crazy when they drafted Gibbs. So they're going to start utilizing him more. But touching on the next game, we have the Chargers against the Titans. This one's going to be very interesting to me. Right now, the Chargers are a 3-point favorite with an over-under of 45.5 points. Right now, Eckler has been moved to doubtful. So Josh Kelly, likely the next back up. It'll be interesting to see if Spiller gets any type of work. Seems like Kellen Moore likes to use a 2 running back system. I don't think that Spiller is going to threaten Kelly of having top tier production. But right now, these two teams are they are matched up in a way that exploits the other's weakness. The Titans were one of the best teams against the run last season. They were one of the worst against the pass. Chargers are a great passing offense. The Chargers were one of the worst running defenses in the league. And we know Derrick Henry and the Titans, they love to run the ball, especially after watching Tannehill in week one. I think that Henry's going to see his snap percentage increase. I don't think we're going to see Spears out snapping him again. I think that Henry's going to have at least 20 carries on the game, which used to be no doubt. Of course, he's going to get 20 carries, but he only had 15 in week one. I think that Henry's going to be one of the studs of the week, like a true week winning back. And then on the other side of the ball, who is your favorite wide receiver beyond Keenan Allen? It was kind of questionable between Williams and Quentin Johnston in week one.
I am kind of this week leaning toward Quentin. I think they're going to utilize him a lot more and show why they spent that pick on him.
I had a feeling you'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Quentin Johnson. I mean, I think he's going to be their receiver of the future, and they got to start getting him going and really, I mean, honestly, they really do need to start using him a little more. It was only 1 week, but still, the dude's so talented. I think the Tennessee defense is going to give them up a good fight, which might make Herbert spread the ball out a little more.
Yeah.
I think Quentin Johnson's maybe worth a flex. I mean, Mike Williams is probably the safer play, but I think Quentin Johnson will honestly have the better week.
That's gonna be the interesting thing moving forward. I don't know if either of them are, like, safer plays, you know? Like,
Yeah.
both of them are so boom or bust, it's gonna be hard to decide who you start of the 2. I do think by the end of the season, Quentin Johnson might be the more valuable pick because you could get him 3, sometimes 4 rounds later than Mike Williams in your drafts. But I still am gonna take Mike Williams beyond Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's gonna be a PPR machine this week, though. They don't have any cornerbacks that I'm worried about shutting him down in the slightest, especially with Eckler out. I'm really hoping that Herbert takes some more shots downfield. I talked about it a lot in the offseason. I wrote an article about Herbert getting Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore has increased Dak's A dot over the seasons that he was with him. Dak went from being beyond the top 10 A dot guy to top 5 every season with Kellen Moore running the offense. So Herbert, we know, has a cannon. I really think that he's going to be taking some more shots downfield. And I think this is going to be the week where we see it really open up and see him, in my opinion, this is a little hot take, but start to make his case as MVP this year. I really do think that Herbert's got a great shot for it. It'll be interesting to see. I think that will go as far as the Chargers record goes. You typically don't see an MVP for a team that's below 10 wins. So the Chargers got to start winning some of these games, but I think this is the week they started off.
Yeah. Also, D Hop is questionable, but off of the interview he had, it seems like he is going to be playing. He had a very lackluster week 1. Chargers have some good guys in the secondary. Is D Hop, in your opinion, a risky start?
He's a little bit risky just because of Ryan Tannehill. I truthfully had a little bit more faith that Tannehill could be the game manager at least that he was before, but with 3 picks in the first game, looking as ugly as he did, I'm worried about D Hop right now. He got the targets, so that's great. If you're in a PPR league, still definitely starting him. If we're in a half PPR league, that's when I start to look at maybe some younger guys on some more explosive offenses. And then, like we touched on before, uh, we got the Chargers as a very poor run defense. I think D Hop got 13 targets in week 1, if I'm not mistaken. It was at least 11. I think it was 13 specifically, but regardless, I don't think he sees 13 targets in this game. So definitely a little bit worrisome for D Hop.
I totally agree. I'm staying off Traylon though this week. Please don't start Traylon.
For sure. For sure. I said I would start Kendrick over Traylon, which got Evan all riled up. I think you also disagreed with it, but that's fine. I just think that Kendrick against the Dolphins this week is going to be more guaranteed volume than Traylon Burks. All right, so in our next game, we got the Bears against the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 3-point favorites. Uh, you touched on it in our last episode. It seemed like the Bears had a lot of hype surrounding this offense in the offseason. Come out to a incredibly slow start against the Packers. They did not throw the ball deep, which is what we're hoping to get. They had a very low A dot, and it's frustrating to see because I think that Justin Fields is a talented deep ball thrower. But right now, the question on the other side of the ball is, can Baker support both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? I don't think that both are going to have a great game. I don't think there's going to be, unless they get down to a crazy deficit early in the game. I don't think there's going to be any games where both Godwin and Evans are guys that you want to start in the same game. Personally, I lean Godwin, But what do you think if you had to start one of the two?
I'm honestly going Mike Evans. I think he has, the higher touchdown chance. Like last week, he should have had there was one where like Baker threw
Drop
it from
cover one.
Mike Evans dropped it. If he caught it, it
Yeah.
was an easy touchdown. I believe he did get a touchdown, right? Or was it
Yeah.
Godwin?
No,
Yeah.
he got the touchdown, and then he should have had two.
Yeah. I mean, I think Mike Evans is going to be the more, I don't want to say reliable, but I think he'll be the one that on average will be the better receiver of the two. Um, I don't know. I didn't really draft. I drafted Mike Evans a little bit. Didn't really draft Godwin at all. I mean, Baker only threw for like 173 yards. I don't think there's enough passing
Yeah.
volume or deep plays and passing volume in general to really ever rely off of both of them. I
Yeah.
mean, I would start Mike Evans still this week. I mean, Chicago's defense did not look the greatest week one, so I think you could feed him. But honestly, another thing I got to say about Tampa is Rashad White. I'm very worried about him, especially after Thursday's night game. Rashad White struggled against the Vikings defense, and DeAndre Swift showed that there is no run defense in that
Yeah.
Minnesota. Yeah, so
100%.
Rashad White is a scary start this week. I think so.
I completely agree with that. A lot of the hype behind Rashad White, uh, A, we touched on it last week. It's just the volume in general. But B, a lot of people are also talking about how Baker targeted running backs at a very high level last year. He started off the season with Christian McCaffrey. Like, of course, you're going to target your running back when you have Christian McCaffrey on your team.
Yeah, who
I
wouldn't? He'd
think
be
those numbers could be a little bit skewed. When he was with the Browns, he didn't target Kareem Hunt at a crazy high rate. Of course, there's Nick Chubb there, and he's not a pass catching running back, so that could weigh into it as well. But I don't think that he specifically targets his running back at a high rate when he doesn't have Christian McCaffrey to skew those numbers. And they also decided to split a lot of the passing work between Sean Tucker and Rashad White. They both caught two passes, both for low yardage. I think that Rashad White can be set if you have better options. I do think he still remains a flex start in two flex leagues. It's yet to be determined where we're moving with him. If he has another game where he is incredibly inefficient, I'd be happy to try and trade him for even trade low on him. You hate to trade a guy low, but that might be the best option moving forward if Sean Tucker this ends up getting more and more involved in this offense.
Yeah. No, and also, like people say Baker throws to his running backs a lot. You think about it too. I mean, he's got two good receivers for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, there was a couple years with the Browns where he had some decent guys,
Yeah.
but it was old vets on their way out.
I will be
for
the
most.
first one to admit that neither Odell or Jarvis were at the top of their game. I
Oh,
was actually just talking about this on the Browns podcast that I was doing. I love what Jarvis Landry did for the Browns in terms of bringing an attitude to our city. I feel like he changed the culture. No disrespect to Jarvis Landry. However, he's not a guy that was going to create a ton of yards after the catch. He's not a deep field wide receiver. He's not a contested catch guy. He'll make some difficult catches, but he's not. This is definitely the best wide receiver core that Baker's had. So
yeah, and even
I'm with
Odell
you
was
there.
hurt most of the time. So
Yeah. All right. So and then on the other side of the ball, we got the Bears. Definitely, am still starting DJ Moore personally. I do think that the Buccaneers' run defense is good enough to kind of create a funnel towards the pass offense. I'm not too worried about that. I will say that I'm a little bit hesitant starting Khalil Herbert. I had very high hopes for him this season. I still think that he can turn it around, but I don't know if it's going to start in week 2 against this run defense.
yeah, I'm honestly more trusting in starting Roshan Johnson, to be honest.
He looked like the receiving back, so
And when you have a, running back room that's just full of people and, there's not a single guy that stands ahead and carries, you want the receiving guy always.
Yep,
Um,
for sure.
and yeah,
I
I'm
like
still
that call.
starting DJ Moore too. I mean, think about who Green Bay's #1 cornerback is. One of the best in the league, Jair Alexander.
For
I
sure.
mean, Moore is going to have a better week.
Yeah,
Just be patient. I mean, that offense will get going still. I mean, Fields is still a young guy. We hyped him up a lot this offseason, but he's still you
for sure.
got to work out some kinks.
Yeah, completely agreed with that. Also, don't start Darnell Mooney. I know he had a decent week 1. Don't fall for it. I'm also looking anywhere other than Cole Kmet if I can. Not reliable. Has touchdown upside. He showed that in the end of the last season, but if you can, start somebody else. Now, this one, though, I am looking to start all of the players that I can in this game. We got the Chiefs against the Jaguars. Chiefs are favored by 3 points. Travis Kelsey is back. He's back, and he's going to improve this offense substantially. Uh, Side note, we got CEH questionable. Not too worried about that. I don't think he even really impacts the other players that much. Maybe Jerick McKinnon gets a little bit more passing work. Maybe Isaiah Pacheco gets a few more carries at the beginning of the game. We saw CEH lead the game last week with the majority of the touches on the starting drive. Regardless, not much of an impact there. However, I am starting Kelsey. I am starting Mahomes, obviously. I am not starting any wide receiver, but I am interested to see how this impacts Sky Moore. I know you're probably interested to see how this impacts Kadarius Toney and Evan somewhere out there yelling Justin Ross into the void. But I it's going to be interesting just because the Detroit Lions, they don't have a great defense, but they were able to key in on wide receivers since there was no true threat there. With Kelsey there, that's going to be the focal point. Andy Reid's a genius, so Kelsey will be open whenever he wants it to go his way. But with Kelsey being the focal point, I think this does open up opportunities for bigger plays elsewhere on the offense. Again, don't start these guys. I think you guys all know that. I don't think I could talk anybody into starting any of the Chiefs wide receivers this week. However,
Yeah.
keep your eyes peeled. I think there's going to be opportunities.
I mean, I think out of any of the wide receivers, the only one that I can make any argument for starting this week would be Sky Moore, but that's if you're desperate and if you're really needing an upside week. I mean, Kelsey will open the ball for everyone else. The game was totally off. They went in with a game plan. Kelsey went out like 3 days before the game started. That's a little hard to deal with sometimes. But still, yeah, don't start Tony. Don't start. I mean, Rashee Rice I think, was the leading receiver. I still, don't start him. Don't, yeah, really stay away from them completely, in my opinion. Obviously, slam Kelsey in your lineup if you got him. You drafted him in the first round for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I just saw a trade in one of my leagues. Let me pull it up really quick, actually. Let me get this exactly correct. It was very interesting seeing what Kelsey's potential trade value is. Right now, Kelsey was traded in a redraft league, no tight end premium. It was Tyler Lockett, George Kittle, and Tyler Algier for Travis Kelsey. What do you think about that trade?
I'm not taking it. I'm taking Kelsey any day.
100%. I'm in the
Like,
same boat, man. And I like Lockett, and I think that Algier has good value, but he's really a flex play at best. When you're getting the best player in the trade and also one that's going to be a difference maker of potentially 100 points between the next best tight end, I'm leaning that route every single time. As soon as I saw that trade happen, I was like kicking myself. I have Mark Andrews in that league. I love Mark Andrews, and I think he's the only guy who can contest with Kelsey in terms of points per game.
TJ
I would
Hawk.
have. Yeah. Yo, I mean, after last night, it's hard to argue, man. You called Jacoby Myers, and right now, TJ Hawkinson's the best tight end in the league by far. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see when Kelsey and Andrews comes back. My whole argument that episode for Dynasty was that Andrews is the Dynasty tight end one to have. Do we make a bet? I think we got to make a bet.
Yeah, we got to figure something out.
I think we got to go points per game, Andrews versus Hawkinson. That way
Yeah,
it takes
'cause
injuries out
obviously
of it.
the 1 week behind obviously would give
Right.
Hawk a
That's
big.
why I'm thinking
Yes.
points per game instead of points on the season.
All right, yeah, we'll figure something out. Then I'll be
Locked in
winning.
there.
But
I love it. I love it. Let's go. And anyone who's watching, comment what our punishment should be. Be within reason. We're not spending crazy money. We're not doing one of these things where you take a bus trip to fucking Bangkok. Shit, I swore again. But we're keep it within reason. We need some punishments though to deal out between the two of us. All right, we got Hawk versus Andrews points per game. I love it. Put it on the board. All
easy
right.
one.
Yeah, we will see. All right. So moving forward though, on the Jacksonville side of the ball, I think it's a really interesting conversation. Who are we starting between Christian Kirk and Zay Jones?
I'm still going with Kirk.
I feel
In my
like that's what the heart wants. I agree with what the heart wants. But my brain's like he did not start outside of the slot. I think I brought up the stat last time. He had 91, I think it was 91.7% of his routes from the slot. And they ran the most 12 personnel sets in the league last week. So those two things, the heart and the brain, they're arguing right now. I don't know, man. I think Zay Jones might be the start here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't got anything to make a huge argument against it. I mean, I'm just kind of trusting off the connection that Kirk and T-Law built last week or last year. But I mean, this game is going to be a very high passing game. I think it's going to be the highest scoring game of the week. Could potentially be the highest scoring game of the year. Um, but so I mean, I think just because of how this game is going to go, I'm not scared starting Kirk this week. If he has another awful week, then I'm starting to look for another receiver somewhere else. But I'm still trusting my faith in Kirk, especially in this game.
Okay. Yeah, I agree that I would be willing to take the shot on Kirk over other lower passing offenses. I think this week they run more three wide receiver sets. Um, I I think if you have strong wide receivers and Kirk's one of six that you have on your team, I would probably look elsewhere. But I'm not terrified by his week one or anything like that. Quick question though. Let's say Evan Ingram, Pat Fryermuth, David Njoku. Fryermuth and Njoku play each other this week. It's going to be Steelers versus Browns. But of those three, who would you start?
Fryermuth, I would say I wouldn't be starting. I'm still a little worried because I mean he only got one pass. Pickett looked awful, and then Fryermuth obviously did have a questionable tag for most of the week, so that's a little worrying going this close to a game. I mean he is
Right.
healthy, but that is something that can limit them, especially in tight end, which is already a very limited position. Um, I mean, in Joku, I think there's some potential there. Watson didn't show me enough to really trust like entirely in any target there. I think Ingram's my play just because, especially this week, because it's is going to be high powered. Like I said, I mean, I think Ingram will have a good week this week.
Okay. I am kind of split just because the reason why I brought it up is because I felt like it was very close between the three. I agree that this offense, like this game, is going to have so much higher total score points scored in comparison to the Browns versus the Steelers. Browns versus Steelers has one of the lowest over unders on the week right now. But with the Steelers, you have Deontay Johnson out now, and then it's Pickens and Allen Robinson and Calvin Austin. Like Austin's exciting; he's so fast, but like Allen Robinson's not exciting. Pickens didn't look great in week one, and I don't think that he is going to be good enough to truly separate from Martin Emerson and Denzel Ward. So I think that leaves opportunity open for Fryermuth. And then kind of a similar vibe with the Browns. I think that the Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore are more they're going to be more focused on in comparison to Njoku. Njoku's so athletic, it could open up some room for a big play. It's really, really close between them. Honestly, I will still stick with Fryermuth. I think mainly because of the Deontay Johnson injury. I just don't see Pickens and Allen Robinson making enough of an impact to for Fryermuth not to get more targets than he had in week one. I mean, bare minimum in week one because he had one target, but we'll see how it goes. It'll be an interesting game. To go on to a lower over-under game, we have the Colts against the Texans. It's going to be in Houston. Indy is just a 1-point favorite at this point. The over-under is 40 points. Good news is Anthony Richardson has been cleared to play. We also have Stroud. He's got a shoulder injury that's leaving him questionable right now. I do think it doesn't seem like it's been blown up to the point where he's going to miss any time. But also in news, we have Zach Moss fully healthy today, full participant. Looks like he's going to be back. It's not an injury that you're worried about re-aggravation. It's an arm injury. It's not like a soft tissue issue. So I think personally, it feels ugly as hell. I think Zach Moss might have like RB1 upside. It feels so dirty to say. I had to like whisper it, but like Deion Jackson was terrible. He fumbled the ball twice. We got Evan Hall out. We know Jonathan Taylor's out. I don't see any other option. I think it's going to be Zach Moss with a heavy workload in his first debut for 2023.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of upside there. There is the RB1 upside of him, but I think there's also RB5, floor range for him. There's a
Right.
lot of it's a very, if you're starting Zach Moss, it's a very risky play.
Wide range of outcomes for sure.
Yeah, I would kind of lead more towards it. I mean, I think Indy's going to kind of I think they're only favored by one, like you said, but I think they're honestly going to kill Houston, especially if Stroud, if he doesn't play. I mean, that's big. I think he is better than Davis Mills, even at this point, young in his career. But if Stroud is playing, it's a shoulder injury. That might limit really what he's doing, how much they're throwing. So it could lead to Dameon Pierce and Singletary having some pretty solid weeks this week. Just with Stroud, you don't want to you don't want to hurt your franchise guy too much, even if he's playing, you still want to kind of make sure he's all good to go. So I don't think Houston's going to call too much of Stroud if he's not 100%, in my opinion. And yeah, Richardson's going to feed, I think, this week.
Right. I think that Richardson will definitely carry the team. I'm definitely starting Pittman, not starting Pierce or Downs. I'm not starting Kyle Granson, even with Jelani Woods out. I will start Zach Moss confidently in my flex. Texans consistently bottom of the league in terms of rushing defense. We touched on it in our last episode, but historically bad run defense last season. I think that Moss is a good play. On the other side of the ball, how dare you disrespect Davis Giraffe Neck Mills? I'm obviously kidding. I don't care about Davis Mills at all. He just got that long ass neck, bro. It's crazy. But yeah, Nico Collins, even regardless of what quarterback starts, I think is a really good play. The Colts don't have great outside corners. They have Kenny Moore, who's a decent inside corner. But regardless of just having that one slot cornerback, I'm not too worried about anybody. It'll be interesting to see if Tank Dell gets a little bit more play. Noah Brown is reported to be out this week. So Tank Dell could get a little bit more snaps. Not looking to start him, but definitely interested to see how that goes. I think Robert Woods can be added to rosters, not starting him. Also a guy that runs a decent amount of his routes from the slot. Not looking to start him, not a high upside play. Might be a decent floor play though, if you really need that. So no one's looking to play for their floor though. Any other
Yeah,
notes on this game?
I mean, Woods, I honestly think his floor is going to be around like 6-7 points. His ceiling is going to be around like 15, and that's on his best of weeks. I just don't think the passing offense is there. They got too many young weapons, and they are still in a rebuilding year. They're going to want to use these young guys and really see what they're worth. But
Right.
don't start Tank Dell. Dynasty, if you have him, I think this is a good week to kind of watch out, see what he can do. But yeah, redraft. I mean, maybe keep Tank Dell on your radar, but don't.
Yeah,
I'm not picking him up yet. And when you only got 15 spots on your team.
for sure. One other guy to keep your eye on, again, don't start him, but Dalton Schultz ran the most routes in the league of the tight end position last week. Very interesting to see if he can step it up with the lack of wide receiver weapons they have on that team. Didn't look good in week one, but I do think that there is a chance that he can get more and more involved as the offense starts to gel and find their true studs on that team. All right. So the next game, I know you're looking forward to this one. This would probably be my lock of the week in terms of a winning team. We got the 49ers against the Rams. 49ers are the 8-point favorites. Over under is set at 44 points. Kittle is reported to be, he will be back to 100% without a questionable tag. Really happy to see that. Kittle is a force to be reckoned with when he's fully healthy. It's just unfortunate that he gets injured a decent amount. But then the running back situation on both sides of the ball will be interesting to watch. Christian McCaffrey was heavily leaned on in week one. I thought that Elijah Mitchell would get a little bit more of the work on the ground. Obviously, the passing work's going to be heavily favored towards McCaffrey. But I'm interested to see if Mitchell starts to creep his way slowly into some of that volume of McCaffrey's. And on the other side of the ball, Akers out touched Kyron Williams in week one. He was far outproduced by Kyron Williams in week one, though. I also, again, talked about that last episode. Not the happiest about that as an Akers dynasty manager. However, we stay water. We gotta adapt. I picked up Kyron in a couple of leagues. I am not starting any Rams players. Not a single Rams player in this game. There's no way I'm taking the chance on that against this defense. However, every San Francisco starter should be started. I think that Purdy is worth a back end QB start. I think Kittle obviously started, especially with the tight end landscape. Debo, it'll be interesting to see how he's used moving forward. Starting, Ayuk starting, McCaffrey starting. That's it. It's an easy game as far as the start sits go, in my opinion.
Well, all I gotta say on this, a Niner fan right here, gotta get my spiel in. Rams, they know that Debo is their dad. I mean, he's their father. Debo owns the Rams every week. I mean, in DFS, I'm going to be taking Debo a lot this week. Ayuk, I still think is going to have, a good week where, you're going to be glad you started him. But I think Debo is going to, have his blow up week. CMC is going to do what he always does, maybe throw another passing touchdown against the Rams. But, I mean, Mitchell, I'm worried about him. Obviously, week one, Niners were killing them the entire game where, it's like, okay, let your lead back rest a little more, put in some guys who, is usually reliable and can get some work. They didn't seem like they wanted to use him as much this season. But so that is the situation kind of that I'm more watching for. I mean, it is a division game. Anything could happen.
True.
But
Rams outperformed what I think expectations were for sure.
Yeah, I think Seattle was favored by like 6.5, and I mean,
Who's favored by 6.5?
well, I was saying week one, I think Seattle was favored against the Rams by 6.5.
Gotcha.
And I mean,
Yeah.
beat them
Yeah,
by 23.
Yeah. And I saw your note in here. Puka Nacua is questionable.
To my knowledge, yes.
I didn't catch that report.
Unless they cleared his injury today.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an oblique injury. Yesterday, he did miss practice. I haven't seen a ton on it today. That is a little worrying to watch. If he's out, I am starting Tutu Atwell and Tyler Higbee. Put him in your damn lineup. if Puka is out, because
Interesting.
he is going to be the only guy that I think has any for sure thing. Tutu is, he seems like the wide receiver 2 right now with Cup out, but I mean, it's still, major upside, low floor kind of play right there. But yes,
Yeah.
throw Higbee in your lineup for sure this week.
Interesting. Because I mean, especially if Nakua is healthy and on the field, I'm not starting Higbee. I have Higbee in a couple of leagues. I really thought that he was going to be the guy that they leaned on with Cup out, and even with Cup in the lineup, I didn't see Nakua making as big of an impact as he did in Week 1. So I have him in quite a few leagues, especially where I took tight end late. I would love taking guys like Dalton Kincaid and then backing him up with a safe floor play in Tyler Higbee. Um, but yeah, if it's a full PPR, I can see your point. Um, Higbee could just dink and dunk his way to 10 points. But outside of that, definitely not starting anybody on the Rams. Any other notes on this game?
Um, Maybe expect Kittle to have a better week. He is more recovered from the groin injury.
Right.
Kittle's that guy who sometimes he's going to put up weeks like he did week 1. Sometimes he's going to put up weeks where you're like, why was he not the first tight end drafted?
Right.
Just that's
Right.
George Kittle.
Yep. George Kittle in a nutshell. All right. Moving on to the next game, we got the Giants and the Cardinals. Definitely looking for the Giants to make a big bounce back from their 40-0 blowout against the Cowboys in Week 1. I don't think that the Cardinals are going to look formidable is not the right word. Semi-respectable against the Commanders last week. I'm looking for them to return back to form, performing how we expect them to, being a bottom of the barrel offense and defense. Right now, the Giants are favored by 5.5 points, and the Cardinals, they don't have any weapons. I'm not looking to start Marquise Brown. Oh, I'm sorry. The over/under is also 40 points, very low over/under on this game. So, not looking to start Marquise. Really, the only guy in this offense I'm looking to start is James Conner on the Cardinals side of the ball. Are you starting anybody other than James Conner?
No.
Yeah,
Maybe Marquise Brown if you're desperate, but that's if you're desperate. That
you got to be
offense
done.
was abysmal. I mean, even James Conner is, a little risky of a start, but he's the only weapon that team's got right now. They got some good wide receivers, but they don't have a good quarterback to back them up.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Same tight end situation. McBride, Ertz, both talented guys. It's really uncertain which one of them is going to be the lead tight end. And when you got that in a very poor passing offense, um, yeah, Connor's the only guy who you should even think about starting on that team.
yeah. It did look like Ertz is the clear starting tight end right now, but I have no idea why. Especially if a team's rebuilding, why are you not giving the young guy a shot? Like let him learn from this year and become better in year 3, rather than giving 31, 32-year-old Zach Ertz another 10 targets for 20 something yards. So that'll be interesting to see. I do think that the Giants run away with this game. In my survivor pool leagues, I'm taking the Giants here, uh, trying to still lock up some early season wins without having to spend that pick on one of the top 10 teams in the league. But yeah, other than that, we got Waller's healthy. Start
Mhm.
him. Saquon's obvious start. If I was to start any of the wide receivers right now, it would be Darius Slayton. He's getting usage. I'm not starting him, but if I was forced into it, I would take Darius on the chance that he might pop off for a long touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much. I think this is going to be Saquon's week. I don't think anyone else. Waller, I think will be, worth a start for sure, especially tight end position's weak. But I think this is Saquon's week to absolutely feed. Arizona does not have a good defense, really. Saquon had an underwhelming week 1. He's going to want to come out and ball out. I think they'll be using him a lot more than they did even last week because they were down the entire game last week. Yeah, I think Saquon is going to be honestly top 2 running backs this week, and
I
that's my
could totally
opinion.
see that.
With CMC probably being 1 because it's Christian McCaffrey, but
Yeah, yeah. All right. So on the next game, we got the Jets at the Cowboys. Might have been an interesting game if Rodgers didn't go down in the first 4 snaps, but right now we got a Zach Wilson led offense. Haven't heard of them signing any veteran yet. Have you?
no, I know there's I mean, I know they're probably looking a little bit, and I've heard a little rumors, but no like factual reports, just
Yeah.
all rumors. And
Right.
rumors can be
Nothing
started
signed
by
yet.
fans who are just hopeful, like, oh, let's get Philip Rivers out here or something. Like, I don't.
Philip
Like,
Rivers. I feel like his name always pops up ever since his years with the his year with the Colts. But yeah, I don't think anyone is. I'm even worried about starting Garrett Wilson. I have one league where I'm super deep at wide receiver. I'm actually sitting Garrett Wilson. It feels weird. I hate doing it. I had the 12th pick in that league. Um, it's it's a weird world, man. There's no way that I would have imagined sitting Garrett Wilson. But right now, on in that league, I have Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett, and Mike Williams. Mike Williams, the only guy that I would consider sitting for Garrett Wilson, but with the Titans having that pass funnel offense or defense, I think Mike Williams has more potential to go off and have one of those week winning boom games. Uh, Garrett Wilson, I just don't see that ceiling unless they get a reliable quarterback and maybe a better matchup. Right now, the Cowboys have too good of a pass rush, and Zach Wilson doesn't know what to do when he sees any amount of pressure in the pocket. We saw in that game, he didn't look terrible, but he very
he looked like
frequently, when saw pressure, he would run 10, 15 yards backwards, hope that the guy doesn't get him, and then maybe throw the ball out of bounds 2 seconds later. So, not looking to start Garrett Wilson if you have credible other options. That being said, I think Brees Hall is still a start. He just has the ability to break off a big run at any point. He's so fast. He's still they mentioned he's still going to be on a snap count. Robert Saleh said that, so I'm taking that as at his word. But right now, I think that Brees Hall is the only starting piece in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the only one that's for sure gonna do it. I'm still starting Wilson in my leagues. I mean, he did have a good season last year, and we got to kind of think about what he did last year, because Wilson did not improve in the offseason as what it looked like, or Zach Wilson did not improve
Right,
in the
right.
offseason at what it looked like. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of what Garrett Wilson did last year as far as fantasy production. He's going to have some weeks where he just is electric, and then some weeks where it's just eh. I mean, the dude's so talented. We saw that touchdown catch um, in week 1. That was just amazing. Already has
Or
catch of the year
incredible.
potential. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you do have the depth and there's someone that you really think could be doing better than Wilson, it's not the worst sit, in my opinion.
I mean, that was the thing. I just had crazy depth at wide receiver in that specific league. I totally understand starting Wilson, especially where you drafted him. And like you said, he's got the crazy talent to the point where like he can outperform it. But last year at the beginning of the year, surprisingly, the Jets were one of the past heaviest offenses in the league. They had Joe Flacco rolling out there throwing like I think it was legitimately 60 passes in a couple of games. It was at least 50 in a couple of them, but he had that. I mean, I remember very well because it was the most embarrassing Browns loss I have ever seen.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were up,
I remember
yeah,
that
we
one.
were up three scores. I don't need to say it. Apparently, you remember. It is so bad that even non-Browns fans were like, "Wow, that's embarrassing for Browns fans."
Yeah, no, I remember that being the game that really put Wilson on the map.
Yeah, that
Honestly,
that was so tough to watch. But yeah, because they were such a pass heavy offense at that time of the year, I think that it skewed a little bit of the numbers. But I still just think that Wilson is at best considered like a wide receiver 3 moving forward with Zach Wilson in this offense, unless they get like a really favorable matchup.
Yeah, in
Um,
redraft, it honestly would not be a bad idea to still try to move away from Wilson, see if you can get a good offer. Because some people are going to be still thinking, oh, he was a second round pick. He's that talented. He's going to do that.
yep.
You can maybe get like T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, maybe try to pull that off of someone. It's a good offer to send.
Yeah. Oh, right, especially with the down week 1. So one thing I looked up really quickly, Zach Wilson started between weeks 4 and 11 last year, had 100% of the snaps. During that time, let me skew it just a second. There we go. Week 4 to 11 in PPR leagues, we had Garrett Wilson um, in points per game, or I'm sorry, in total points, he was wide receiver 50 during that time with Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Just doesn't put up big weeks. It's frustrating. We all drafted Wilson to be great. I think he would have been if he had Rodgers there with him. It was sad seeing him go off the field being like, sorry, young buck, but it is what it is at this point. During that time, Garrett Wilson had 8.4 PPR points per week. It's incredibly low. No faith in Zach Wilson. So if you have a pivot option, do it. Like Mason said, if you are able to trade him for something decent, I would do it. All right. Moving
The
on.
Dallas, we
Oh, you're
forgot the
right. You're right.
defense.
Dallas,
I'm a,
I do think that side of the ball is easy, especially if Brandon Cooks is out. There was reports he has a sprained MCL. So unfortunate news for Brandon Cooks. I do think this gives Michael Gallup some flex appeal. They don't really have a wide receiver 4 that's worth mentioning. So between CD Lamb starting, Michael Gallup, I think if you, I would. That's a good question right there. If Brandon Cooks is out, who would you start? Michael Gallup or Garrett Wilson?
I would start Garrett Wilson in that opinion. I'm honestly this week, even if like Cooks is in, the only people I'm starting on the Dallas offense are Pollard, obviously, CeeDee Lamb, obviously, and then Dak, even though I am a Dak hater. The
Yeah,
Jets defense is just too good, in my opinion. I mean,
yeah,
that's the focal point of the entire Jets team now that Rodgers is out is the defense, and
right.
that good defense.
Right? They made Josh Allen look terrible. So I could see arguments for people. And I mean, Dak is like that QB 10 to 12 range. So if you have other options, go feel free to start somebody over Dak. I agree. I think that in most 12-team leagues, I think Dak's going to be started. CD, like you said, obvious. Pollard, obvious. And if I do stand by it, I think if Brandon Cooks misses this week, I will start Michael Gallup as like a wide receiver 3-4. But
Yeah, I mean, a
we'll see
double
how.
flex maybe
Yeah,
starting,
double
but
flex league.
one
But I feel
flex,
like
no.
that's the standard league now. If you guys only have one flex, get expand. We need more than just the one flex, or
Two
at
makes
least
it a
get 3
lot
wide
more
receivers.
interesting.
What's up?
Two flex makes it a lot more interesting because you need a little more depth.
So much more interesting. All right, so we are getting to our final 4 games of the day or of the week. We have the I almost said their old name. They're Washington Commanders against the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are favored by 3.5 at this point. The over/under is a low 38.5 points. That is tied for the lowest on the week. Jerry Judy thankfully expected to play. Really hoping he doesn't re-aggravate anything. As a Jerry Judy dynasty manager, I would have been fine with him sitting out this next week if it means that I am more confident in him starting the rest of the games throughout the season. But yeah, I think that Jerry Judy's going to provide a little bit of a spark for this team that they need in the passing game. Looked pretty abysmal in week 1. And then we have Cortland Sutton, I am not starting him with Jerry Jeudy back. I don't think that he has enough of a reliable route tree. Like I think that he's more of a downfield target, a contested catch guy. I don't think that Sean Payton and Russell Wilson are looking to make those throws right now. Seems kind of more of these safe routes, check down to the running back. That being said, I will start Javante, looking to avoid P Ryan. And then, I mean, if you're super desperate in dynasty leagues, maybe you can look towards Adam Troutman. He had 5 targets in week 1. Dulcich is ruled out. The tight end landscape is terrible. So that is the only reason why I'm saying this right now. But Adam Troutman, interesting. I'm preferably, of course, not starting him, but interesting name to watch. What do you think about the Denver offensive pieces?
Javante's really the only one I'm feeling confident in starting. I'm not even starting Judy this week because this injury early on. I think he's going to be a lot more limited. It's not going to be really his full snap count, his full route run, full amount of routes run. And that being said, the Broncos passing game is poor. It's not very good. And that with limited snaps in that is going to really hurt what he will do this week, in my opinion. And obviously, even if he does come back and he's not getting a ton thrown to him, he is going to take away from Cortland Sutton. I just don't think anyone on that offense is worth the start this week except Javante. I mean, Russell Wilson, if you're in a super flex league, might be worth the start. But
Yeah. I personally, just on Judy, I mean, you already know I'm a Judy stan. But it's a hamstring injury. Generally speaking, with hamstring injuries, they don't get rushed back. You need that, you need to know that they are fully past that because they are so easily re-aggravated. So my thoughts are, if the Broncos are managing this in a wise way, they're not going to put him back on the field unless he is 100%. It does feel a touch early in the recovery process for him to be 100%. But I'm really hoping, I'm putting my faith in Sean Payton and the training staff, and that Judy will be 100%. So I would be willing to, again, one of those guys right on the cusp, but I would be willing to start him in 2 flex leagues. All right. We didn't touch on Curtis Samuel. He is ruled healthy. The Washington side of the ball, I'm not starting Brian Robinson. I know he had a decent week 1. Denver Broncos defense is too good for me to rely on Brian Robinson getting the volume's not going to make a difference. I don't think that he's going to get the efficiency against this defense.
his play just isn't going to work very well against the Broncos defense, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, they're solid up front. I don't think that this offense is good enough to rely on him falling into the end zone. And if Antonio Gibson decides not to fumble the ball, maybe he'll get a little bit more work. We'll see. And then we got I don't think I'm starting Terry McLaurin either. I love Terry McLaurin as a talent, and I drafted him to be started. I'm just not confident enough, especially if the Broncos are treating him as the true wide receiver 1 and putting Surtain on him. I don't think that he's going to have enough reliability to get even, I don't know, 5 receptions, which again feels terrible to say, but until proven otherwise, I don't think I'm going to start Terry McLaurin against stud defenses like this.
I mean, I can honestly understand that point. I think Dotson, if they do get a passing touchdown, I do think Dotson's going to be the one who gets that. He's a stud in the red zone.
Yeah.
He did have a rough week 1, but he was recovering from turf toe, I believe.
McLaurin, yeah.
Yeah, that is for Terry, anybody with turf toe, that is can be a pretty lingering injury, something that you don't, overwork them. I mean, week 2, like you said, Denver obviously is not the best matchup for him. I'm still starting him at the flex position. If you don't have any better options, I would still start him. but I'm not expecting him to have a true Terry McLaurin week.
Yeah. I would still flex Jahan Dotson, but right now, just a little bit too worried about McLaurin. We even saw last week, it was Broncos versus Raiders. Devontae Adams, obvious stud, 6 for 66, and he's that PPR dude. Like he's going to get the targets. He's going to make the space in order to get them. McLaurin's more of a downfield threat. I don't see that being valuable enough against this defense to exploit. So I'm sitting McLaurin if I can. Obviously, not going to be an option for every team.
Yeah.
All right. So 3 games left. We got the Dolphins against the Patriots. I think this is going to be a great test for the Dolphins offense. The over-under is 46.5 points, with the Dolphins favored by 2.5 points. Will Mac Jones continue to see this high passing volume? I think that's very much dependent on if the Dolphins jump to an early lead, like the Patriots had an early deficit in week 1. That'll be interesting to see. And then we also have Juju. Is he going to remain on this low snap count? He had 27 snaps last week, where Kendrick Bourne had 54 snaps. He was third in terms of snaps on his own team. We saw Booty and Mario Douglas both outsnap Juju. Hunter Henry was leaned on in the passing game. Mike Gesicki wasn't even really talked about at all, but he's still there. I don't know if Juju maybe should be traded for bare bones, whatever you can get for him right now before you potentially cut him. But I think we're getting to that point already. I'm maybe cutting Juju.
I mean, honestly, I avoided him all offseason, didn't really draft him in much. He's a Patriots receiver. It's been like this for a while. I mean, sometimes we'll get one guy who's reliable for the Patriots, but that was when Brady was there even. That offense is all over the place. Bill Belichick likes to switch it up. I don't think Juju's ever really going to be a reliable start. Maybe if you're in a league where you got 3 flexes, he might be able to start in there, but a lot of people don't do 3 flex.
Right.
Yeah, I'm honestly just staying away from any New England wide receiver. Hunter Henry, I'm even scared about because they do have Gesicki. I I don't think anyone on that offense is a reasonable start except for Ramondre. And Ramondre had a pretty decent fantasy production wise week 1 due to his he got 6 catches, like 66 yards or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, somewhere in the 60s for the yards, but yeah, 6 receptions, 60 something yards.
Yeah. And this was with him being sick most of the week too. He wasn't
That's
there
true
for
too.
this week. Yeah. And obviously if even if it's just a slight cold or something, you're going to come back to the game still feeling a little groggy and stuff. That kind of leads me to
You're still right with that, because whenever we hear like cold on the injury report, we're like, get over it, NFL player, you can go do it. If I had a cold and then I went and got hit by a 300-pound man, I'd be like, sorry, Bill Belichick, I'm done for the day. I'm gone. Thank you for my time. Give me my paycheck. I'm gone.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. A lot of people sleep on like illness is a serious thing because, it doesn't like it's not going to leave you with a physical injury, but it does take a toll on your body where it takes you a couple of days to really get back to form.
For sure.
And honestly, with him being sick and stuff, I think that's why Zeke got as much usage as he did. I mean, Zeke didn't really have a good week. He had the fumble still. Don't start Ezekiel Elliott in any leagues, please. I mean, week 1 kind of proved that to me that the only way that Zeke will be a viable option is if he's scoring touchdowns. But still, Ramondre, I think, will still get a lot of red zone work.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Ramondre is the only start on the Patriots side of the ball. If you're super desperate at quarterback or in your super flex league, I would be fine with starting Mac Jones, but not looking to start anybody else there. Hunter Henry's also a interesting start if you have a injured tight end, but it looks like most of these tight ends that were questionable or missing in week 1 are going to be back this week. So Hunter Henry worth a roster spot. And against Miami, being as an explosive as an offense as they are, maybe they have to throw their way back into the game like last week. Maybe Hunter Henry gets it. Not reliable, though. Definitely I would say there's at least 8 to 10 other tight ends where I'm confident starting over Hunter Henry right now.
I agree.
On the other side of the ball, it feels pretty easy. Definitely starting Tyreek, definitely starting Jalen Waddle, definitely starting Tua. Outside of that, I don't think there's anybody.
Yeah.
Mostert, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say Mostert might be the only one, if you don't got better running back options. But
Yeah,
I do think A Chain is gonna kind of maybe develop a more of a role in week 2.
yeah,
Honestly, someone who I've been really surprised that I've seen a lot of waiver pickups is Crarecraft. I don't know if I said his name right,
great
but
craft.
he's yeah,
You know what? I don't know if I'm saying it right either. I've said it confidently a bunch of times, but then you said I was like, I don't know.
everyone picked him up. I think he put up 11 or 13 points, which is a pretty decent week from a wide receiver in fantasy. But like the passing volume was just insane in that game. Don't expect it to keep up. Waddle even didn't get thrown to as much as we all thought he would. Waddle had a very underwhelming week 1. He still got 11 points, I believe. But
Yeah.
like I mean, yeah, nobody on this team I'm starting except Waddle, Tyreek, and then Mostert if I'm desperate.
Right, touching on interesting pickups in dynasty leagues, I saw Barrios on a lot of free agency lists, even past waiver wire pickup on Tuesday. I saw him sitting there, picked him up in a couple of leagues. In one of my deep dynasty leagues, I spent 60 something bucks out of my 200 bucks in of Fab. That's only because there's nobody on the waiver wire. I'm not going to go spend 30% of my Fab on Barrios in shallow leagues. But when you got nobody else there, might as well throw some money on a guy who's got some speed on an offense who likes to target guys deep downfield. Other than that, though, I think we pretty much capped it. It's Waddle, it's Hill, it's Tua that you can start confidently, and then Mostert if you're desperate.
Yeah.
All right. Monday Night Football, baby. We got some Saints versus Panthers action. Saints are favored by 3. Over under is at 40 points. Uh, Big divisional rivalry. These two teams are in a very poor division, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Both of them are a little bit defensive. Their strengths are on the defensive side of the ball. For me, again, another easy game where I am definitely starting Olave. I'm comfortable starting Michael Thomas. Even if you picked up Shaheed, I'm waiting on that. I don't think it's going to be consistent enough to the point where I'm starting him in regular redraft leagues. Derek Carr, still not confident enough to start him right now. If you're desperate, maybe you can give him a start. But on that side of the ball, that's about it. Not starting Juwan. I'm not starting Jamal Williams personally, even with the heavy workload. Just doesn't have the passing upside. And unless he falls into the end zone, he's not going to be worth the start.
Honestly, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on Jamal Williams. I think this is a great week to start him. He's playing against Carolina, who's got torched by Bijan and Aligier last week, who showed their run defense is not necessarily the best. Obviously, I believe Tennessee's is better than Carolina's. Jamal got stuffed a little bit, but I do think the Saints offense is going to be a lot more higher scoring this week. I think they're going to have a way better week, which will lead to Jamal getting more opportunities in the red zone. If I can get him as I'm starting in more flex position. Not really RB1, RB2 range. There's plenty of better options out there, but I do think it's going to be a good week for Jamal. And then obviously start Olave. I would start Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas might only have 2 more weeks, so get your
Start
value
him
out
while
of
you
it.
got him.
Yeah,
That's so funny. Yeah.
yeah.
It is
Carr's a
interesting what you said because like I could see Jamal finishing within like flex play area. In my mind, the way I draft, I just go wide receiver heavy early. I'm typically not getting guys like Jamal Williams. And if I do, it's because they fell so far and I have better starting wide receivers. So maybe it's just the mindset. I hear what you're saying though, and I do think that Jamal Williams, especially if he does end up falling into the end zone, he could be a running back 3 to 4 area, and maybe 2 if he falls in the end zone like we're talking about. So that is interesting, something to think about. I think it's just like a stylistic approach with how I draft my teams. Generally speaking, you can see wide receiver fours outscoring RB3s a lot of weeks. So it's just how I draft, but I do hear what you're saying. It's not unreasonable to start Jamal Williams at all.
And the Carolina side of the ball, don't start anyone but Miles Sanders. Bryce Young did not show anything that he's going to provide consistency to any receiver. I mean, maybe Hayden Hurst if you're desperate at the
That's
tight
what I
end
was gonna say.
position.
Gonna
But
be
like,
my disagreement on the side. I think Hayden Hurst is worth starting personally. But I mean, of course, there's many other starting tight ends that have a lot more upside. But I picked Hayden Hurst up as like my third priority in a lot of leagues. Right now, it was going Gus Edwards, Joshua Kelly, and then Hayden Hurst personally. I know a lot of people. Again, it's a stylistic thing. I don't need wide receivers on my teams. I go wide receiver heavy, so I didn't need Puka. I didn't need Shaheed. So Hurst was third on my list in a ton of leagues. I have him in a ton of leagues, and I am willing to start him if I don't have one of those top 6, 7 guys.
yeah, I mean, I could totally say that it's not going to be a stupid start for anyone to put Hurst, especially when DJ Chark's out. I mean,
Right.
Thielen's not what he used to be. Mingo's still got a lot to prove.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah,
Yeah.
don't
I
start
feel
Bryce.
you. What'd you say about Bryce right at
You
the end
can't
there?
start Bryce.
Right. Right. All right. So, the last question I have is, out of the wide receivers in Carolina this week, who finishes as the top wide receiver, Thielen or Mingo?
Uh, I would probably say Thielen, but I would not be surprised if Mingo was the number one receiver.
Right.
Uh,
And it's very neither one of us are taking like major stances here, but I would go slightly the other way. I would say Mingo, but it wouldn't surprise me if Thielen's there.
yeah, that's when I think Carolina is going to be, at least until Chark comes back. It's the receiving core is just going to be someone that you only really start if you're desperate. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not taking. I don't think I have Mingo in a single redraft league. You know, I have him in some dynasty, of course, but redraft, it's like, okay, Bryce Young still is getting used to the NFL. He's not going to have these electric early weeks. Like, I don't think he is, at least. And then once Chark comes back, I think Mingo really falls off.
Okay, yeah. I don't even have Mingo in any of my dynasty leagues either. I do like him as a prospect. It's just didn't the cards didn't fall that way. The only guys I have rostered in any type of leagues from the Panthers is Sanders and Hurst. Um, but yeah, we got our last game of the week. We got Browns versus the Steelers. My favorite game of the week, of course. I think I'm gonna jinx it. I'm gonna jinx it. But I think the Browns take this. I think this is gonna be a good game for them, especially with Deontay Johnson being out. There were some conflicting reports. I mean, the reports were from the team side of things, and then Deontay himself. Deontay called himself day to day. Of course, the player is going to say he's going to get back sooner than he is. The reports that he's going to miss at least 4 weeks. I would stand more towards that side than day to day. Regardless, Pickens is a big bodied wide receiver, kind of similar to T. Higgins. T's got much more separation ability, but even with that ability, granted it was a rain game, 8 targets, 0 catches. He lived on Emerson Island last week. I'm really hoping that Martin Emerson can do the same thing. I'm starting to get too Browns heavy rather than fantasy related, but I wouldn't start Pickens this week personally, even with Deontay out. You might think that like volume can go his way. I personally think that they will lean elsewhere. I think they're going to look to the run game. The Browns have a pretty bad run defense. Didn't look terrible in week 1 of this year. but last year they were a bottom 6 run defense in the league. Um, I think that they lean on Najee and Jalen Warren. It does seem to be moderately split, at least more so than it has been in years past. So I would start Najee. I would consider Jalen Warren in DFS, not redraft. He might have one of those blow up plays. He's got the speed to bust one for a big play, but really the only two players I'm looking to start from the Steelers are Pat Fryermuth and Najee Harris. Are you starting anybody else from the Steelers lineup?
I'm still starting Pickens, but that honestly could be some personal bias. I think Pickens was my most drafted player this offseason. Week
Interesting.
one was a shot in the heart to me with how awful. I mean, obviously it was against the Niners, so that's good that it
That's
was.
good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but fantasy wise, I was a little crushed with how Pickens looked even after Deontay went out. I think Pickens does have a better week too. I think there's plenty of other options you could start over him, but I don't necessarily think if you have to throw him in as your flex that it's like a terrible start. I do think he will have a better one. Game plan will be a little different.
Right.
Obviously, Browns do have the pass rush. I mean, they got Myles Garrett, and that was something Pickett really struggles with. So maybe this could be another rough week for all the receivers, but I'm still putting some trust into Pickens.
Right. Pickett struggled. Mason Rudolph struggled against Garrett.
Yes, well, we all know that one.
Bang. But on other notes, I do think that Nick Chubb's obviously a start this week. I'm definitely starting Deshaun Watson. I'm not concerned about any cornerback that they have. They brought Patrick Peterson in this week or this year. I think Amari Cooper is far better than I'm worried about Patrick Peterson covering him. The guy I'm most worried about causing havoc is TJ Watt. Right now, the Browns lost Jack Conklin. TJ Watt is a left outside linebacker. We are bringing in rookie Dewan Jones. He is a physical freak because he's giant and pretty athletic, but he's a rookie. Watt just went up against the Eagles last week, number one ranked offense. Hold on, I'm sorry. The 49ers last week. You guys have a very solid offensive line. Um,
I mean, we got Trent
I,
Williams, so
I mean, he's on the left side. He's the left tackle, though. He's
yeah, no, I
definitely
know.
the best left tackle. I honestly don't know who your right tackle is, but you are also a PFF top 5 offensive line. Um, TJ Watt still had 3 sacks. So
Yeah,
with him going up against a rookie, he could absolutely cause havoc, and that could throw a wrench into some of these offensive numbers for the wide receivers. I do still think that Amari Cooper's absolutely worth a start. I think David Njoku's worth starting. Obviously, we talked about Chubb. I think Elijah Moore is also very interesting. He led the Browns both in targets, catches, and yards last week. So I think that Elijah Moore is interesting. He's also getting some work out of the backfield. Um, I don't know if I'm confident enough to say that I am for sure locking Elijah Moore into my lineup. That's going to be dependent on each team's roster. I think he's interesting as a flex play, though. Outside of that, Watson can also be started. Again, if you have a better quarterback, I would say Watson's more towards 8 to 12 range than he is top 8.
no, yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think Cooper's going to have a better week too. He did have a little underwhelming week one. Elijah Moore is really a risk start. But I mean, like you said, it really is going to be the team they're going against. Are they going to have a heavy passing game plan? And if they do have a heavy passing game plan, I think Moore is going to be worth a start in the future. But I mean, if Steelers played their offense like they did last week, then this is not going to be a passing game. And
Yeah, I had it up before during my Browns podcast. Oh, where'd you go? There you are. All right. I had it up during my Browns podcast. The Steelers, I'm not going to look it up. The Steelers threw the ball over 80% of their plays. I know they came out to a huge deficit early in the game. That would be crazy if they can kept that up. So definitely look for Najee to get a little bit more volume. Don't be scared by him. And then just like you were touching on, I do think that the Browns are going to throw the ball more and more throughout the season. It was a rain-heavy game. They still threw the ball 29 times. So that being said, like that's about as much as they were throwing the ball the year prior across the season, not necessarily rain-heavy games. So I do think that Elijah Moore is interesting. But other than that, we are done with week 2 previews. All we got left is the question of the day. To remind you guys, since 2018, 6 rookies have ran for 1,000 rushing yards in their rookie year. How many of them repeated that feat in their second season? Answer: 5 of the 6 rookies repeated that in their sophomore season. Those rookies: Philip Lindsay, undrafted Philip Lindsay, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris. A little sub note: Nick Chubb also ran for 996 yards in his rookie season, just 4 yards away from 1,000. Also had well over 1,000 yards in his second season. The only one of them that ran for 1,000 yards in their rookie season and did not follow it up is James Robinson. Moral of the story: we have a couple of 2022 rookies who ran for 1,000 yards. Mason, do you want to take a stab at who those rookies were last season who ran for 1,000 yards?
Algier, I know that. I know he was 1,000-yard rusher. And then I also want to say Walker.
Yep, those were the 2. Algier
Okay.
was the harder one. I was
Yeah.
surprised. Did you also say his name French or some shit? You're throwing some
Yeah, I
like
don't say it right. It's one name that I just
Algier.
can't learn
You
for
so
some.
fancy, boy.
Yeah, it's a
No, but
name I
yeah,
just for some reason.
those were the 2. Both are on pace for 1,000 yards this season. Yeah, I think there was a lot of, I mean, of course, with Bijan being added, nobody thought that Algier was going to rush for 1,000 yards again this year. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up this year. Do they continue to keep on splitting the work? I think we all expect Bijan to keep on stepping up in his volume, but maybe that's just a 60-40 split. At the beginning of the year, I did anticipate that Algier would have a heavy workload. I predicted that Bijan would get 65% of the rushing attempts by the end of the season, and that Algier would have close to 35%. I still think that Algier is, of course, right now he's flex worthy. I think he's going to continue to remain that way. I do think that Zach Charbonnet is also going to step up in his workload. I also think that Kenneth Walker is going to be another 1,000-yard rusher. With the stats that we have right now, 5 out of 6 and nearly 6 out of 7, if you include Nick Chubb with that 996 rookie season, it's a high percentage. So I would say go invest in these guys. I know uh, there was a lot of putting these rookies down because of the draft talent that was added by Charbonnet and Bijan. I think that you can still get them on the low in Dynasty based on these numbers, based on them being added. But these numbers are showing that they might be able to repeat these rookie seasons. Go and get those guys. This has been a fun episode, man. I love previewing these games. We're going to see how this all shakes out. Maybe come back at each other. We got another bet on the board. Eventually, I'm going to make a board back here, and we'll get them on a literal board. So, dude, Mason, good shit, man. Great episode. We'll see you guys next week, reviewing week 2 and previewing week 3. Have a good one, y'all.